I would rather look at the conditionings and leave what could be open for the person discovery. So because it's easy to pass from one superego model to another superego
Yeah,
model,
yeah.
from
Mm.
the traditional 9.5 weeks movie style idea how sexuality and romance should be. Quickly we can move to another enlightened image of tantra,
Yes.
of sublimation, not having an orgasm, not for the man not to come. So many other ideas can come, which can
Yeah.
also be a limitation and a box.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think this is one of the major problems,
Mm-hmm.
is that we constantly
Mm.
put ourselves in boxes of how we should be.
Yeah, we relate through images rather than through reality.
Yes, yes, and reality can be every time very different. And so if we make a model of how it should look like, it is always limiting reality, because between spontaneous is to be dynamic and changing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is an emphasis which I would like to
Mm-hmm.
make.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what would help, I mean, what we are doing here, for me, it's also part of a bigger project. The main, for me, the main focus is to free the person from how the ideas of how they should be and how they should change in a certain way.
Mm.
And in order to do that, we need to look at the condition, the superego, and the conditioning and around sexuality, but
Yeah.
not how to replace them, or with what to replace them with.
Yeah.
It's more like, then it's up to the individual to explore.
I think the problem with describing what healthy sexuality looks like sometimes is that it becomes an image,
Yes.
and we relate to it from the superego, as you said, comes in, and it's like, okay, so I'm not there now. I have to go to this. I have to go to this behavior,
Yes.
and it can be used, manipulated
Yes. Yes.
again by the ego.
Yes.
So
So what is beautiful into sexuality is to be spontaneous and natural, and
yeah,
to have an image and to have a program of how to be is really the killer of being spontaneous.
yes,
So spontaneity is the main goal, if we want to call it like that. The biggest achievement,
hmm
which in a sense over has more value than a very good sexual performance, which
hmm
is based on imitation, or on a model. So I think the attraction to sexuality, the why even if everybody is conditioned, everybody is obsessed about it, is
yeah,
because there is a moment, at least, where we lose ourselves. We lose the ego sense of self,
hmm
in the orgasm, or possibly also during the making love, to some extent, more or less. and,
yeah,
and that's what we all are um, attracted to,
yeah,
to be ourselves in a spontaneous way, without thinking, without having superego, and to be connected to our vitality, and to in an intimate relationship with another person, of exploration, of playfulness and intimacy. So that's what we are attracted to. But everybody comes up, so how should I do it? And the point is, like, that is the problem.
yeah,
So I mean, personally, I think the roots of this is that as teenagers, as children, we are disconnect eventually disconnecting from our vitality, our essence, our point of light, our real
yeah,
self. And while we are connected to that, we feel also our sensuality is part of our experiences. To be living outside of the ego structure, being in essence, as children, we feel the pleasure of being genital. We call it genital character. We
yeah,
feel pleasure all over the body. That if you try to snuggle a child, you feel a certain amount of intimacy and pleasure in that. Children are, when they hug you, they feel pleasure. It's not sexuality yet. It's close maybe to sensuality for us, and it's a sense of pleasure. They experience pleasure in the body. To be
Yeah.
connected to essence is to experience pleasure
All over the body.
all over the body. It's not limited to the genitality like in the grown-ups.
Yeah.
So by the time we hit puberty, when there is a transformation where we disconnected from essence, we start forming an ego structure. There is also the disconnection from this feeling, from this experience. It's not a feeling, it's an experience, from the experience of being genital character.
Mm-hmm.
And our sexuality becomes limited to the genital area.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a complex topic because there is also the connection with the autonomic regulation and the need of complete discharge of the nervous system. So to have the orgastic capacity, to be able to have an orgasm, is important for our physiological, neurological health, because we have the capacity to discharge the nervous system completely, which otherwise it would always build up some kind of static, what we may call some residual negative merge in our language.
Mm-hmm.
So the capacity to have orgasm, it gives the capacity to discharge completely the nervous system. So it is important. In fact, people which cannot have orgasm, they are suffering from neurosis, different disturbance. So as we disconnect from that feeling of pleasurable experience, we start becoming adults and disconnect from essence and from the pleasure of that experience, we also feel, we get also in touch, confronted by the society, by the grown-ups. Do you have a girlfriend? Did you already have sex? We get exposed to our peers and to the conditioning of society around the topic of sexuality and relationships.
Yeah.
So that has a strong impact because, of course, you can see so many cultures, so many differences. So if you grow up in a place where or in a family, the family and the society have a strong influence. So if in the family sexuality is not talked about, if it's wronged, then the child growing into the teenager is going to have certain ideas. It's going to start hiding it. It's going to maybe start feeling guilty, or maybe the peers are teasing him, so he's going to start feeling deficient. So the ego starts forming. As we form an ego which is helping us to interact with society and surviving in social environment, at the same time we're also developing a sexual ego, how we are going to go about our sexuality.
Yeah.
So at the core of this, there is the disconnection from essence. And before we felt this pleasure, and then eventually we don't feel the connections to it anymore. So there is a deficiency, the feeling of a deficiency. I lost something. I lost this pleasure, and now I'm an ego self,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I should have a certain type of relationship. I should pursue sexuality, sex, and
Yeah.
but most of the time we are not allowed or encouraged to do that naturally. We are told it should be this way. You do it only when you're married, or you do it. You have to have sex the first time with a prostitute, or so many different upbringing, so many different conditioning, and the person is not encouraged to look. What is my sexuality? What does my sexuality look like?
So the adults have an image of what it is, and then they try to put you, as you're growing up into puberty, into that image. Is that right?
Yes, and not just, and there is many complication to it because there is an agenda. Maybe they are afraid that the woman is going to get pregnant. So there is not just an encouragement to the growing up teenagers. Say just be natural. They say no, be careful what type of man you're going to find. there is not just what it should look like, which comes from the media and from the culture and all of that, but also all the fears and jealousies of the family and the society and the people around us.
Yeah.
And we have no idea. We are coming out of the blue. And so we get all these different inputs from all these different people. And we have to navigate this without any teaching, without any map.
Yeah.
So what happens is that most of the time we hide it. Yes, from our families, and our family, our parents have been hiding it from us. So we understood that it's something to be hidden. It's not
Yeah.
to be talked about,
Yeah.
and there is definitely no encouragement to be natural about it.
Yeah. To discover it for yourself.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So this brings a lot of, you can call them kinks, a lot of that kind of distortion in our sexuality. At the bottom of it, there is always the sense of deficiency. I don't know how to do it. I've never done it. I've never. A teenager has also the issue of the first time.
Yeah.
So there is performance anxiety. There is no real connection. There is actually a feeling of deficiency and disconnection.
Yeah. And so, what's interesting to me mostly was what you said in the beginning about it's not so much about defining what healthy sexuality looks like, but defining what it's not. And then that will allow you to discover it for yourself, because otherwise you're going to move from one superego image to
Yes,
another about how
yes.
you should behave. So, could you go in a little bit into a little bit of detail about what gets in the way of, what are the issues that get in the way of spontaneity, and in especially in sexuality?
So I think that what we were just talking about can be explored systematically. So of course the issues which come in our way would be, first of all, how did we perceive it in our family? The impression of that interaction. So parents maybe were very secretive about it, or
Yeah,
mother was feeling guilty about it. So that would be in us to some extent.
yeah,
So that we need to understand it. We need to inquire into it, and to by seeing it, by being conscious of that imprint, kind of being able to eventually move over it. Then there would be, what is my peers? What were my, if you're a man, my friends saying about sexuality, and now, and now what did I learn from them?
yeah,
So then maybe it was about having to have a certain type of performance
yeah,
and trying to live up to that. So
yeah,
the ego would be constantly trying to do what it thinks should be doing
yeah.
in the sexual.
And this kind of performance, this comes from, or this image of performance, it comes from the false red, not being in touch with the real red and trying to imitate it through an image, or trying to feel it through an image.
Mainly is to try to, let's say,
Because
fit in. To do it right. It's like
yeah,
I'm normal.
yeah, but that thing that forms in a group of boys or men, it's there is like an agreement that is, we are potent, and that's a very core part of who we are, and then there is an image of how we express that. So that means, well, it can mean a hundred things, but
Yes, I
typically,
understand. I think I understand. Yes, as I was saying, there is a feeling of deficiency. Especially men, being relying on an erection and a certain time duration of the intercourse, because of the physiological limitations of a man, is always underlining, especially considering our the media, what the media have
Yeah.
proposed about around sexuality, or what is potency. So in man, you will always find a sense of deficiency, because what about if I don't have an erection tonight? I'm going out, I really like this girl, and it's my, and what about if I don't have an erection? What
Yeah.
about if I fail? What about if I come too soon? So the man has a sense of deficiency underlining.
Yeah.
So of course, all that talk between the boys is to cover up that sense of deficiency. So there
Yeah.
will be the boy which is, maybe most deficient would have a better story to tell of how good he is,
Yeah.
what that he has done to his girlfriend. Maybe it's not even true, and he saw some in some pornography or somewhere, and he's telling to the younger kids what he's doing, and so he's compensating, he's covering up this feeling of deficiency by showing off,
Yeah.
and at the same time conditioning all the other children to what? Oh wow, am I going to do that?
Yeah.
He was with 4 women all night, and
Wow. Yeah.
something like that, and he went to and in this trip, and every woman loves him, all these stories,
Mm.
and the younger one, they get like, oh my god, um, maybe they don't end up doing the same, bragging, but they end up feeling every time they interact with a woman, feeling, remembering those stories and say, well, I'm not like that. Am I gonna, so they're trying, and by trying, what happened in men, but by controlling, holding, controlling, it becomes very much disconnected by being natural. Because being natural means tonight I meet with my girlfriend and I don't know what's going to happen. It's not going to be this perfect performance. We're going to be intimate, we're discovering each other, and tonight can be that we maybe just caress each other. It doesn't,
Doesn't have to have a big bang.
yes, doesn't have to have a big bang. And if we always put the big bang as a model, we
Yeah.
are always trying,
Yeah.
always disconnecting from the reality of the moment. Oh, and we may become very good in performing the act, but eventually it is not fulfilling us. Even if we are fulfilling the stereotype, we end up not being feeling mechanical about it. And most of the relationships, in most of relationship, the sexual act becomes a routine,
Yeah.
becomes a kind of program, different poses, different things that follow, and they fulfill the image, the expectation, and also they give pleasure and they discharge the nervous system, so they fulfill, but it does not come close to the potential of what is an intimate sexual relationship.
Yeah.
It becomes routine. So everything that becomes routine is not fulfilling for the human being. So yes, the question is, is it using the false red? Yes, in a sense, yes, is covering up the sense of deficiency that is there in all of us, because the reality of it is because we lost the connection to the essence,
Yeah.
which was giving us the feeling of pleasure.
The actual potency.
Yeah,
The actual red.
and when you are connected again to that, there is no need of the big bang or the performance. And you know yourself, we all know that sometimes just touching somebody's hand is amazing,
Yeah.
and it gives immense pleasure, and we experience love, and it doesn't have to go anywhere until the mind comes and capitalize on the superego, and then. But especially at the beginning of the relationship, we see how pleasurable it is just to be intimate with someone, even just a hug, even
Mm.
just the skin.
Yeah. But that's only if you've overcome the images, right? Because as long as you're stuck in the images of how things need to be, a hug is not going to be enough because you don't allow yourself to really feel the hug.
Yes,
You just, it's an
yes.
image of a hug. It's not,
Or you feel it, and then you say, "Well, this feels really good," and then now what should I do? Now I should make her happy.